Try it on, one of the stepsisters yelled, tossing a bright red dress across the room. Lena caught it instinctively, the fabric landing in her lap as laughter filled the air. She sat frozen on the edge of her bed while her two stepsisters leaned against the doorframe, phones in hand, recording her humiliation. Come on, Lena, the eldest sneered. Let's see if it fits. Oh, wait, she smirked, eyes sliding down to Lena's body. I forgot. They don't make dresses your size. The younger one burst into laughter so hard she nearly dropped her phone. You'd rip that thing in half before you even zipped it. Lena's cheeks burned, her fingers trembling as she gripped the fabric. Stop recording me, she said softly. Oh, please, the older sister scoffed. We're helping you. You'll thank us when you lose weight one day. If that ever happens. Girls, their stepmother's voice called from downstairs. Leave her alone. She needs to finish cleaning before dinner. The two exchanged smirks, then turned to Lena one last time. Make sure to clean the mirrors too, one said, grinning cruelly. You're the reason they're cracking. They laughed their way out of the room, slamming the door behind them. For a moment, Lena sat still. The red dress lay in her lap like a cruel joke. Beautiful, elegant, something she'd always dreamed of wearing. Slowly, she stood and held it against herself in front of the mirror. Her reflection stared back, round cheeks, tired eyes, a girl trying to believe she was worth something. Then the laughter from the hallway echoed again. Lena's chest heaved. Without thinking, she grabbed the dress and tore it down the middle. The sound of fabric ripping filled the room like a scream. She stood there panting, tears streaming down her face, the ruined dress hanging from her fingers. Her voice came out in a whisper. I'm done. Downstairs, her stepmother called again. Lena, are you crying again? You know, no man wants a girl who cries this much. Lena wiped her face roughly. No man wants a girl like me anyway, she muttered under her breath. But deep inside, something snapped. That night, after dinner, when everyone had gone to bed, she pulled out an old notebook from under her pillow. It was filled with rough sketches, dresses she'd drawn since she was a child. Designs made for women like her, with curves, softness, and real beauty. Her pencil moved quickly, anger and pain fueling her lines. For the first time, she didn't draw to escape. She drew to fight back. Hours passed. By morning, she had made a decision. She was leaving. She packed the notebook, her few clothes, and the torn red dress. As a reminder. As she zipped up the bag, she whispered, I'll show them. One day, they'll wish they never laughed. When her stepmother saw her at the door, she scoffed. You're leaving? Don't be foolish, Lena. You can't even take care of yourself. You'll be back. Lena's eyes met hers, calm, steady. You're right about one thing, she said softly. I won't be back. Not as this version of me. The door shut behind her with a quiet finality. That was the last day she cried over them. Years passed like pages turning in a story she was writing herself. Lena worked days at a small diner, nights at a tailor shop. Every paycheck, every coin she could save went into buying fabric, needles, and online fashion lessons. She learned. She grew. She changed. Not overnight, but through quiet persistence. Her body began to reflect her strength, not thinness, but confidence. Her eyes shone with purpose. Her walk carried the weight of self-belief. One day, after finishing a long shift at the tailor's, her boss, an older woman named Marta, handed her an envelope. You're good, Lena, Marta said. Too good to be working under me forever. There's a design showcase next week. Enter. You deserve to be seen. Lena hesitated. I'm not ready. You'll never feel ready, Marta replied with a wink. Go prove to the world what I already see. The following week, Lena stood behind a tiny booth at the city's community fashion fair. Her banner, True You Designs, hung proudly above her. She displayed 3 dresses, each crafted for real women with real shapes. People stopped. They stared. Some admired. Some whispered. A few sneered. That's the fat girl from the Wilson family, isn't it? Someone murmured. She's changed a lot, another said. Is that really her work? Lena smiled politely and kept talking to customers. By the end of the day, something miraculous happened. A fashion blogger approached her booth, filming a short clip. Everyone's talking about this designer who celebrates real beauty, the blogger said. Her name's Lena, and she might just change the game. That night, her phone blew up with notifications. Orders, messages, interviews. Within weeks, True You Designs became a trending name online. And then came the invitation that would change everything. The Vail Foundation cordially invites you to the annual Women in Innovation Gala. Her hands shook as she read it. Ethan Vail, the billionaire, the investor, the man whose foundation supported rising entrepreneurs. She laughed nervously. This must be a mistake. But it wasn't. The following Saturday, she stood in front of a mirror, not broken, but whole. Her reflection smiled back at her in a gown she had designed herself, soft emerald silk hugging her shape perfectly. When she arrived at the gala, the lights were blinding, cameras flashing from every direction. The ballroom shimmered with wealth, diamonds, designer suits, champagne laughter. And then she saw them. Her stepmother, her stepsisters. They froze mid-conversation, eyes wide. The younger one's glass slipped slightly in her hand. "Lena," the stepmother whispered, her voice barely audible. Lena smiled faintly. "Good evening. You look—" One sister trailed off, unable to finish. "Different," Lena offered, with a calm smirk. That's what happens when people stop believing what others say about them. Before they could respond, a deep, composed voice came from behind her. "Lena from True You Designs." She turned. Ethan Vail stood there, tall, magnetic, and utterly poised. "Yes," she said, trying to keep her composure. "I've been wanting to meet you," he said. "Your work is extraordinary." Her stepmother's jaw fell open. Ethan smiled, extending his hand. "Would you join me for a drink? I'd love to hear your story." Lena hesitated only for a second before placing her hand in his. "I'd love that." As they walked away, whispers filled the air. The girl they once called fat was now walking beside a billionaire, and not because of luck, but because she'd built herself into someone worth seeing. But what Lena didn't know was that this meeting would be the start of something far greater than success. Ethan Vail had met thousands of women, models, executives, socialites. None of them stayed in his mind for more than a few days. But Lena, something about her lingered. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Her calm confidence was magnetic. They sat at a quiet corner of the gala, a soft golden light washing over their faces. "So," Ethan said, leaning slightly forward, "you built your brand from scratch?" Lena smiled, a hint of disbelief still in her eyes. "From scratch and stitches. I started sewing after hours at a diner job. It was all I had." He studied her carefully. "You make it sound easy." She laughed softly. "It wasn't. But pain is a good teacher." Ethan's expression softened. "And what did it teach you?" "That what others think of you doesn't define who you become," she said, holding his gaze. There was silence between them, the kind that spoke louder than words. Then the host's voice broke through the music. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ethan Vail to the stage for tonight's keynote speech." He stood, straightened his jacket, and smiled down at her. "Don't leave before I'm back." "I won't," she replied. As he walked away, Lena couldn't help watching him. His confidence, the way the crowd leaned toward his every word. He spoke about innovation, resilience, the courage to rebuild yourself after failure. His eyes met hers mid-speech, and she realized he wasn't just talking about business. He was talking about her. After the speech, he returned to her side. "I hope I didn't bore you." "You didn't," she said, smiling. "You made me believe again." For the first time in years, Lena felt something warm flutter in her chest. But not everyone was happy to see her shine. From a nearby table, her stepsisters whispered furiously. "Can you believe this?" one hissed. "He's actually talking to her." "This is embarrassing," the other spat. "We have to do something." As the night went on, Ethan invited Lena to a smaller private dinner the following week, a gathering for designers and investors. She accepted, nervous but excited. When she arrived at the dinner, she noticed something off. Her stepmother and sisters were there, seated across the room, dressed extravagantly, clearly invited by someone with influence. She froze for a second before Ethan appeared beside her, offering his arm. "You look incredible," he said sincerely. She smiled, trying to hide her unease. "Thank you." The evening went smoothly, until dessert. As she reached for her glass, one of her stepsisters accidentally bumped into her, spilling red wine down her pale dress. "Oh no," she gasped, her voice full of mock concern. "I'm so sorry, Lena." The table went silent. Every eye turned to her. Lena stood frozen, wine dripping onto the marble floor. Her stepmother leaned over. "She's always been clumsy," she said sweetly. "Poor thing, Some things never change. Ethan frowned, sensing the venom beneath the smile. Accidents happen, he said firmly, removing his napkin and handing it to Lena. But Lena's hand stopped his. She took a deep breath, straightened up, and smiled at the table. It's okay, she said calmly. You're right, Mrs. Wilson, some things don't change. But I did. With that, she dabbed the stain, lifted her chin, and walked away with quiet dignity. Outside, Ethan caught up to her. Hey, he said softly. You handled that with grace. She laughed bitterly. Grace is the only armor I've got. He looked at her for a moment, then said, You don't need armor around me. That simple sentence cracked something open inside her. For years, she had built walls so high no one could climb them. But Ethan wasn't trying to climb. He was waiting patiently at the gate. Days turned into weeks. They began seeing each other more often. Coffee meetings, gallery visits, late-night walks after fashion events. Lena found herself smiling again. Really smiling. One evening, they stood by the city bridge, the skyline glowing behind them. I don't understand you, she admitted quietly. You could have anyone. Why me? Ethan looked at her, his eyes soft. Because you're real. You see people. You don't just look at them. Her heart raced. But everyone says I'm not your type. Then maybe everyone's wrong, he said. She looked away, trying not to cry. Do you really mean that? He reached out, gently lifting her chin. I don't say what I don't mean. For a moment, time stood still. The city lights reflected in her eyes, and for the first time in her life, Lena felt seen, completely and truly seen. But the world had a cruel way of testing happiness. Her stepfamily wasn't done yet. Weeks later, as Lena's brand began gaining national attention, a fake scandal broke online. Edited photos, cruel captions accusing her of lying about her transformation and stealing designs. The source was anonymous, but Lena knew exactly who was behind it. The internet turned cold overnight. Her inbox flooded with hate. Orders were canceled. Sponsors withdrew. In one brutal week, everything she'd built began to crumble. Lena locked herself in her apartment, staring at the glowing screen filled with insults. Fat liar. Fake success story. She probably slept her way up. The comments stabbed deeper than she expected. Her breath came shallow. She hadn't cried in years, but that night, she did. The next morning, a knock came at the door. It was Ethan. She opened it slowly, eyes swollen. You saw it, didn't you? I did, he said. And I don't believe a word of it. I don't know what to do, she whispered. They're destroying everything. Ethan stepped closer, his voice steady. Then we fight back. Not with anger, but with truth. You built this from the ground up, Lena. Show them who you are. She shook her head. I'm tired, Ethan. He cupped her face gently. Then lean on me. I've got you. Her heart clenched. For once, she let someone hold her, not as the broken girl, but as the woman she had become. Later that week, Ethan called a press conference on her behalf. Cameras flashed as he stood beside her, his hand reassuringly on her shoulder. Every piece from True You Designs, Ethan announced, is registered and verified under Lena Wilson's name. The allegations are false, spread by parties with personal grudges. Lena is one of the most authentic creators I've ever known. The crowd murmured. Lena took a deep breath, then stepped forward. For years, she began, voice trembling. I believed the words people used against me. Fat, ugly, unworthy. But I turned those words into fuel. And if my success makes some people uncomfortable, that says more about them than me. The room erupted in applause. Ethan turned to her, smiling with quiet pride. That moment marked not just the restoration of her career, but the rebirth of her confidence. And somewhere in the corner of that same conference, her stepmother watched, pale and silent, realizing the girl they once mocked had become untouchable. The press conference changed everything. Overnight, Lena became the face of resilience. Headlines praised her strength, interviews flooded in, and True You Designs was booked for months ahead. But behind all the noise, her heart kept coming back to one person, Ethan. A week later, he invited her to a private charity gala, smaller, more intimate. When she arrived, she found him waiting by the terrace, city lights glimmering around him. You look breathtaking, he said softly. She smiled. You always say that. Because it's always true. They stood in silence for a moment, the cool breeze playing with her hair. You once told me, he said, turning toward her, that pain taught you who you are. But I think it only showed the world what I already saw, someone extraordinary. Her throat tightened. Ethan. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I don't want to be just the man who believed in your dream, Lena. I want to be the man who stands beside you while you keep chasing it. Her hands flew to her mouth as he opened the box, a simple, elegant ring gleaming under the light. Gasps echoed from nearby tables as Ethan dropped to one knee. Lena Wilson, he said, voice steady but full of emotion. Will you marry me? For a moment, she couldn't speak. Memories flashed through her mind. The laughter, the tears, the torn red dress, the words that used to hurt so much. And now here she was. Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking. 1,000 times yes. Cheers erupted around them. Cameras flashed. Ethan stood, wrapping her in his arms as the audience clapped. But for Lena, the world had gone quiet. It was just them. Later that night, after the gala, she found herself standing by the mirror again, the same way she had years ago. Only this time, her reflection wasn't broken. There were no cruel words, no mocking laughter, just the woman she had fought to become, smiling softly back at herself. A knock came at the door. She turned to see her stepmother and stepsisters, standing hesitantly in the hallway. Her stepmother's voice trembled. Lena, we saw the news. I'm sorry. Lena looked at them quietly. The anger that once ruled her heart had vanished. All she felt now was peace. I forgave you a long time ago, she said gently. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means moving on. The stepmother nodded, eyes glistening, and left without another word. Ethan appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Ready? For what? She asked softly. For the rest of our story. She smiled, leaning into him. Let's make it a good one. Sometimes, the people who break you are the reason you rise higher than they ever dreamed. Believe in your worth, and the world will follow. If you felt inspired by Lena's story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Every story deserves to be heard, and yours might be next.